here to discuss the district's continuous improvement plan.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Bow, Vice Chair Brennan, and members of the board. Tonight is really about expanding beyond the continuous improvement plan, because that has converted over to scorecards, and there'll be information coming over the next 2 months on district scorecards and school scorecards. But tonight, the focus is really about becoming more familiar as a board with the improvement actions that the school district leaders, including department heads, are embracing in order to feed achievement, in order to accelerate achievement. So you'll find tonight an additional copy of the agenda that just breaks it out for you, what I'm going to be talking about. And I do have a presentation tonight too. It'll let me share. Come on. There we go.
I'm noticing the AI interpretation option in Zoom now. Interesting.
I'll have to explore that one at some point. Not tonight, no. It's good to know it's there. So tonight we have several topics all around the idea of improvement, at-a-glance report cards, the status of those, revisiting the original strategic plan version 1 with 114 actions, the 2024-2025 improvement leadership actions, which again are what department heads and administrators have embraced this year to move achievement forward, and next steps. So at-a-glance report cards, I check every day. It still has an embargo across it when I look. So I called today and I said, tell me why the delay. I'm not fully understanding, and I'm pretty sure that board members are going to ask me why, because they're as curious as I am, likely. So this is what I was told today, this afternoon. The state effectiveness review team is currently reviewing data to determine if districts that were previously identified in targeted status or comprehensive status might actually now be able to exit from that status. So apparently they're continuing to look at the data to determine that.
So the review team continues to review.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wrote it verbatim. I was told also that the at-a-glance report cards probably will be coming out mid-November. So we might not make it for the next board meeting, or we might make it for the next board meeting, but it's at least they're saying November. So here we go. Strategic plan version 1.0. You have this, a copy of this actually in the pile that I gave to each of you. Before I get into the details of it, it was a really great suggestion from one of you that we go back and revisit this just to see how we were doing. You know, that doesn't mean we necessarily accomplished everything, but where are we at with what was proposed originally 2 years ago? So that's why it's on the agenda tonight. There is an abundance of actions, as you know, and we had a shift based on your support that we shift to measures that matter and a district scorecard last fall in 2023, so that we could truly look at what was going to move the needle. Not that there's anything in here that's not important, it's all important, but some of it will move the dial or the needle more effectively than other actions. So what was completed over the last 2 years? Well, 50 of the 114 actions are complete. So I actually feel pretty good about that. Mm-hmm. And 10 of them we took out of the 114, and they're currently in the district scorecard. And those are highlighted for you in the 7 pages of the document. 64 actions are not complete. However, 19 of those actions were to establish SMART goals. So it's 45 things that we haven't completed, 50 things we have, which I think is good pace for 2 years of a 5-year plan. I thought it might be nice just to go through very quickly swiftly through the 7 pages just to see what questions you might have. You'll notice that if there's an X, it means it's not done or there was not a consistent enough practice there. And if there's a check, then it's completed or it's ongoing. It was done once and we're continuing to do the work. You'll see on the first page that the first 4 actions are all on 3 documents. They're on the district scorecard, they're on the state integrated plan, and they're also on the state at a glance report card. You'll see other things that have not yet been accomplished on the bottom of the first page. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions on that first page or if you would like me to continue.
Just an observation on the first group priority 1. It says offer a wide variety of K-12 pathways, but all 5 of those are all high school. I'll deal with high school.
Director Brennan, can you tell me where you are? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I lost
First
it.
page,
First page.
Which number?
very top one.
Oh, there's 5,
K,
yeah.
K-12.
Oh,
Oh.
Yes.
The 5 rows are all high school. And the top, it says commitment to offer a wide variety of K-12 pathways. That's an observation.
that's a good observation.
It is a good observation.
And that's actually, I think, is a perfect reason why it is important to shift to a scorecard, because now we are looking more at K-12 and not just specifically at high school. Other comments or questions on this page?
Like, on that last one where it says student opportunities for credit recovery, 2022 summer participation established baseline, and I know we're continuing. Did we get the report on, even though it's not highlighted, did we get like a high school report on how that's going?
We can. The board absolutely can have that.
Because like how's
documentation.
that credit recovery going? Since that is a goal that we had. Just wondering.
Yeah, I think we can do that very much so. I know that Jessica Brennan could do.
Yeah, she could do that.
It's
Because I know they're working on it really hard. It would be nice to kind of just have it out.
Yeah. And it is continuous. It's
Uh-huh.
it's not something we stop sometimes and then start up again. It's continuous.
Okay.
It's really deciding 2 things. When do we intervene? And it's an extra cost to the district for us to use either BYU or Graduation Alliance. So we have to make sure we have enough funds set aside for that. So it
Well,
can be
also-
prohibitive.
It also makes us think that where did we miss the boat before we had to do credit recovery?
Mhm.
I mean, because you're looking at credit, but you're looking at like 8th grade or 9th grade or so,
Yeah.
you're looking at that. I look at it differently.
I'm pleased that you said that because there has been a tension between credit recovery and that very issue of not wanting credit recovery to overtake what we should be correcting at tier 1.
That's what I'd like to see happen.
Mhm.
Not because I want to see how many kids are in credit recovery. It's like, how do we do less credit recovery and go all the way down to elementary, middle school to see how better we
Which is the end goal, really.
end. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Noted. We'll make sure and get that information to the board.
Would it also be interesting for credit recovery to understand, like, are students like perpetually in credit recovery?
Can you share a little bit more about that question? Like specific grades or?
Well, not so much grades, just like, are students like always like, is any individual student like always in credit recovery,
Okay.
like over and over and over?
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought you meant, yeah.
Okay.
Are there heavy
That's a
users
good
in
point.
Mm-hmm. Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Usually those individual conversations happen between the principal and the student and or family. And sometimes what that leads to is GED work at Chebecca.
Right,
But
and then,
that's a good
Students with the
question.
GED count against us for graduating.
Yes, it does.
yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah.
Just like other like students who are just perpetually like cycling through grad lines.
Mhm. And that takes us back to when do you decide to offer it, right?
Exactly.
Mhm. Great questions. Anything else on that first page? Okay. Second page is a mixture of things that have been completed and are continuing and things that we haven't done. Let you look over that and you can let me know if you have questions or comments or concerns.
With regard to PLC, if they're using forms, are they, like, so a student is a third grader, now they're a fourth grader. Or is the fourth grade team looking back at like third grade's PLC notes for students to see how they may have progressed or not progressed? Or are they using that year over year data? Is that something we're doing, or is
Yes.
it more like a live document?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, it's being used. It's used in the student success team referral process to look back on historical data. PLCs, though, tend to be more fluid and capture what's happening right in the moment in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So yes,
that's good.
So
thank you.
who gets a copy of those PLC notes other than the team itself?
The administrator.
The administrator, so each PLC, they get a copy, okay.
Mhm. Other questions or comments? I don't want to go too quickly. Page 3. Ready for that? Okay. You'll see a couple of points here where we captured on the district scorecard, student belonging and the DESA.
Who is our director of student services?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Just a new way to say her title, I guess.
Did I put in student services or
Yeah.
special services?
Student services.
That's my
So
goal.
you should say
Same kind of
special.
days. Special services.
That's better. Okay.
Yes, you caught me.
Would it be possible on branding students priority to 2.1 PBIS?
Mhm.
It says each spring sharing results with the guiding coalition of each school and the superintendent. Is that something that we could, as a district, as a school board, get a brief overview of what their evaluation, like what they came up with, how the year went, like tweaks, and because behavior is a huge thing.
Mhm.
It's becoming bigger and bigger. And the time between behavior and academics for a student is becoming, right there. And so I'm just thinking, like, the PBIS, what are these teams finding out?
So
What are they gonna tweak?
thank you. It's interesting because each school is in a very different place with PBIS. St. Mary's opts to stick with PACS.
Oh.
There have been resources to provide them to show that the two couple very nicely together. They don't have to combat each other, but they stick with PACS.
So help me, I don't know what that is. I know, I'm very, very familiar with PBIS, but I don't know, what is the system that they're using at St. Mary's?
So I'll
Kind
share.
of, sort of. A little
Yeah.
bit. Not a whole
So
lot.
PACS is more about self-regulation.
Okay,
PBIS is more about effective systems
correct.
and analyzing the effectiveness of those systems. Really, in my opinion, what is needed is both.
Yeah,
We continue to work
That's
on
true.
that. 2 years ago, when this action was put on the strategic plan, I did ask the 3 principals to do the SET, which is the self-evaluation tool for PBIS, and results were very mixed. not necessarily productive or unproductive, but mixed. And until all three schools are in a place where they embrace positive behavior and intervention support, it's difficult to get them to want to use the set information. What I would like to do is take all three administrators and teams to the PBS conference next spring.
Oh, please do so. So with whatever system they use, how do they record the data to give us information back on students?
How do they record their tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 behavior?
Right.
Each school does it a little bit differently. Middle school and high school are more aligned. St. Mary's uses something called a behavior tracker, which follows students and their behaviors and what the consequences or responses are to that.
Okay.
Does that follow within their drawing a blank student profile online? So like when the student travels
In Power School.
thank you.
It does not. It's individual to St. Mary's. It was first developed by Katie Buss.
Oh, so it's
and he's evolved over the years.
So that information is then, does that transition to middle school in any way?
Yes.
Or how do they take the information from St. Mary's to middle school?
Counselors and the administrators.
Oh, they just
come
do it
together
one,
and-
okay, they just share it in one, okay, so it's not electronically, okay,
Well, it is an electronic system,
but
and I'm sure they could share it.
share,
electronically,
yeah, they share it, okay.
It's St. Mary's homegrown system.
Having good solid systems, whether it be academic or behavior, is extremely important.
Is this an area the board would maybe like to have a spring report on, possibly?
I think, in my opinion, I think so. Like, I'm having a hard time understanding the pushback on that because behavior is just escalating and the behaviors that we're seeing are much different than they were just a few years ago. And so like how we handle and how we set systems up to teach the students the appropriate behaviors and stuff will greatly impact our academic grades as well. Like, you know, and the feeling of belonging and kids wanting to come to school, like it all ties together.
Maybe it would be something that we maybe ask our counselors to put together and maybe present something on based on their experience and their data that they have in the spring.
Well, yes, and I look at it, you know, the pushback on data is if you want to help teachers and you want to help students, then you have to have all that data to look at to see, is it all happening at lunchtime? Is it happening in two classroom teachers in the entire building? And then how do we help them? So it becomes a system where you begin to look at, is it, you know, all kindergarten, I'm just making it up, all kindergarten classrooms. So it is important to begin to track the data, not as punitive at all. I don't believe it and any of that. I believe that that's how you begin to help intervene and begin to extinguish things that are causing that behavior.
Tier one stronger.
Tier one becomes stronger, and then you're looking at, and then you begin to take your behavior of that particular area or classroom and say, you look at the academics of that classroom and you compare it to the other, and you're saying, is the behavior in the classroom impeding the students in that classroom's academics? Mm-hmm. And then you begin to make that tie, but it has to be pretty systematic, and it takes, and I don't want to put it on like one counselor giving a report and saying, you know, we had 3 suspensions or whatever. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to, you know, retweak all that, how academic, yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's a, no, go ahead.
Well, and to be not afraid to actually track the behavior. It's not a reflection of you as a teacher or whatever, but it's a reflection of where can we as a school district get stronger
exactly
and help the whole system.
Exactly. That's what we're looking at, is the helping of the whole system, and looking at And I like that when you're looking at data without, what sometimes happens is, it's not about a student or their reputation or anything else. It's about just looking at data information and seeing what we can do differently to help success of that teacher, that student, or the entire system. If it's all happening at lunchtime recess or whatever it is.
Transitions.
Or transitions
Under
or
specials
or after specials, or, and it's particular classrooms, and then you begin to work with that more intensely with some classrooms, but it depends. So yeah, and I think it's pretty important that everybody, and it takes a while, and there's gonna be a lot of pushback.
I am pleased to tell you that I would not say there's pushback. There's a strong acknowledgement, a belief that PACS will cover everything. So it's not quite.
What does PACS stand for?
Um,
I'm guessing it's an acronym.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's PACS like peace. Mhm. It's also called the good behavior game. Some people know it as that.
Well, I'm familiar with the form of PACS also, and how the two marry.
Exactly.
But I understand that they can marry, but, and this is just a personal bias, PBIS is a lot simpler to implement than the other system, because and then the two can come together. The two can come together, but it has to be, if middle school is using PBIS, then I think like elementary school should be using something, so it should be aligned more. So I understand the high school is going to be different because it's a different animal, and they're just gonna, I don't know, honestly, I can't say yes or no on a high school, but I could see a K-8 system that's pretty aligned.
It's fair to say that each of the 3 schools has a start with PBIS, needs to grow, but they have started even at the high school to share expectations through a lesson model, such as cell phones at the high school, and having to teach that to the students directly this year in every classroom. Rotation stations are happening both at the middle school and at elementary, but to increase effectiveness, it would be good to see each teacher teaching the expectation, not just depending on a rotation.
Right. Or assistants teaching it, or the PE teacher teaching it versus everybody's involved.
And I'm thinking as even a brighter thing, or a broader aspect of, if we can identify that, if we can have strong systems, the teacher will feel relief compared to where they're at. Teachers will want to stay. And one of the best things about our school districts is we don't have a lot of turnover, but we do see behaviors growing, and we want to keep it that way. And so that's, when I'm looking at long-term retention, I'm feeling supported.
And support.
Yeah.
For the whole system.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah. So with that, I don't know, let's do something with PBI. Maybe in the spring we have a conversation about it or so.
Conversation and participation in the regional PBIS conference.
That would help.
Sorry, I opened up a can of worms.
No, I think it's a good can to open up.
Overall, is the support of the system.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else on that page that you'd like to ask about or comment on? Page 3. Page 4. Should I continue to the next page?
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
all right, page 5.
Can we go back to like at the top of page 5, just
Sure.
the last couple lines, the last 3 lines there. On the, number 4, top line, students, JFK, St. Mary's, MAMs, identify what can we do, and then the last 2 lines is specific to JFK for offering clubs and events. Would it be? Would we want to include MAMs in that? Because that's the point where they start having some of the clubs and things potentially.
My understanding is that Mr. Taylor did do that this fall in order to, or it was either that or late last spring,
Sure.
in order to develop the electives for this year. So that's a start. It's not the same as a club.
But that's the last line though.
Mhm.
Students for elected, and I can see him.
Could that be changed to MAMS and
Well,
JFK?
Yeah, and I wonder if it's
Necessary.
sort of a strategic plan,
Well,
goals.
it just begs the question, do we want to, will that move the needle? They're all important. That's what makes this hard. It's a challenge to go through this.
It is a
because-
challenge
Because
because I
it's
could
all
see
valid, right?
everything is good.
Yes.
And everything is,
good.
everything's needed and everything is, and a lot of it is already working anyway, little bits and pieces,
But I guess I would go back to that 2.14. If we're waiting for students to get to high school before they can have a voice, are we turning off the voices of middle school students who may not have much of a voice just completely by the time they get to high school? If they weren't important enough in middle school, they're gonna be important in high school. Giving them a voice of what they want to do after school. I mean, it took us 3 years to get a soccer team, which finally we're doing great with the soccer team for boys and girls in high school and at MAMS. Soccer for MAMS.
Yeah.
So that's been great, but again, we're doing it for MAMS as well. And giving those students, an opportunity and a voice. I just hate to wait till they all get to high school, they're all freshmen. Before they have an opportunity to say, this is what I'd like to see in school.
It's a really good point, Mark.
It's valid when you look at the belonging survey.
Yeah.
And you see that the results at high school are exponentially disconnected for high school students feeling like they belong. It's so much broader than it is at middle school and elementary school that clearly we need to do something differently.
But I think even at middle school, the students are, how do I say this? The students are young enough that they haven't become disassociated with friends, things. You don't get that till you're a teenager, a little bit in high school. So they're still kind of in that friend group, willing to try things and do things in middle school. Or when they get to high school, it's like, no, I don't want to get my hands dirty. I don't want to get my nice white shoes dirty anymore.
My friend's not doing it, so I'm not gonna be doing it.
Yeah, well, that happens in middle school, but not to the same extent, Anyway, I'm just throwing it out there.
So what would board find helpful? What information can I gather for you or could be presented to you?
Well, my take is I'm not interested in expanding what's in this strategic plan. And maybe that is something we need to, I guess, I'm curious about that perspective for everyone else too, because I know that the strategic plan is important. And even though MAMS isn't named in 2.14 and 2.15, I think a lot is still happening at MAMS and even probably at St. Mary's on gauging interest and trying to create activities that fit the needs of the students, even if it's not in the strategic plan. So do we have to name everything in the strategic plan that we want to see happening? I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. Because we're trying to we're trying to simplify into moving into the continuous improvement plan and the scorecard so that we can really focus on those items that when we do this well, it's going to have greater impact, you know, throughout the system. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to expanding what's in the strategic plan, and it could be just a simple wording, JFK and Mansfield survey, but then do we want to discount St. Mary's too? Maybe we just want all the schools to be doing that, but that's kind of where I'm at, if that makes any sense. I'm babbling, but
No, it's a good
it's my
point.
reaction.
It is a good point. Another way of looking at it too is I see that our administrators are doing a good job reporting on lots of stuff. For example, the middle school administrators, I think what they can do, and as administrators, they could say it, you know, part of 2.4 is something that's strategic, you know, our club is doing this or blah, blah, blah. They could reference some of these things that are not highlighted if they wanted to. And it's just another way of talking about it, even though they're doing it. I understand what you're saying, Sherry, because we could just kind of go, hey, we need this, and hey, we need this, and
Start adding more
and more stuff. But yet I understand looking at it with clear eyes of like a different set a year later. Mark has a good point where we said that we want it for a certain group versus do we want it for all groups. So it's maybe like rethinking some of this stuff a little differently.
Yeah.
Not everything, not redoing everything, but you know, tweaking it here and there.
May I propose something for your consideration? When it was time to cut things and it was painful, it was hard, I took what was no longer considered essential and I made a second document called best practices. You may recall that, you may not recall that. Maybe it's time for me to revisit that document with our administrators, talk about it this winter and have them report back to the board about best practices that they are integrating into their work.
That's a good idea.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Because they aren't, if you read all the stuff, bits and pieces of all of this is happening. In some places it's a lot, in some places it's just a little snippet, but it's starting to work all over the place. We're just not focusing in on it heavily in some areas.
Would that meet your needs as a board to do that? Okay, we can do that. Other notes on this page. Page 6. We continue to page 7. Are you ready for that? Okay.
Sorry, I see. So if you look at priority 3.
Page 5.
Page 5, page 5. 3.4.
Okay.
100% of board meetings provide interpretation.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, I'll check. So then you go to priority 3. 3.11. In 1. Board meetings interpretation.
Yes.
So does it need to be in both places? I mean, can we snip it?
I think we can, it just happened to fit in both as ensuring transparent communication, but too, as well as the other. But yes.
I'm looking at it from like the same thing, maybe Sherry is. It's like, are there things that we could not continue to add on to, and other things we could take out to make it you know, less of a 7-page document.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, I'm just like,
I'm good with reducing 114 actions.
you know, it's the exact same action.
Yeah, I
And
think-
Can it live in its
yeah,
most,
yeah.
can it live in the most appropriate place one time?
Okay,
Yeah, and if it's a toss up, then you flip a coin. I like that. Not duplicating.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like Sherry's, her initial comment was, we don't wanna add things to our strategic plan, fair. So are there things that, you know, we can pare down so it's a more manageable piece for our administrators and for us to be able to ensure that and be reported on.
yes. Easily done and helpful. I'll leave it in page 7.
So
Page 6, 3.1, communication. April 2023, 75% of parents square, aren't we beyond that already?
I thought so.
No,
No? We're really like 90, or is that for school?
that was
A lot
family,
of
that was
Spanish,
family.
Families.
yes. A lot of Spanish speaking parents that need to have another support system to empower them to access that platform. So we'll be using some Unidos time this fall
But
to do that.
so that's 75% of individual parents. Right,
Mhm.
but we're at 90% of families overall that have it, right, is that right?
Yeah.
I would have to confirm that with Scott
We were in
May.
the 90s.
I thought it was, yeah, I remember that.
I remember that, I was like, whoa, that was quick.
At least one family unit member had
Mm.
parent square. But not
To
all
all or-
adults, not all parents had it, right, 75% of them.
to all parents, I feel I would just leave it the way it is because we're not sure.
No, I'm not saying change anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not saying change anything, I'm just saying
Have we already-
somewhere in the
how we
past,
cheated, yeah, it
somewhere
should
in
be,
the past, we had another conversation about,
Scott presented
Yes.
it, it's technology report.
and there was a separate category for families. Parents was one category, 75%, families was like a 90 something,
Okay,
so.
we'll see where we're at. We'll do that. And it would be nice to put a check there.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you.
And then, so same page 6, number 3 there, the customer satisfaction survey, is that the one that parents are doing right now? Oh,
It's morphed. That was originally. The survey as we know it now was not even a reality when this was made, so it was really going to be something that was specific to Parent Square. Now we have something broader that includes communication within the survey. Does that make sense?
Yep. Do we need to update the wording of that one then, or is that still appropriate?
Wording can be updated.
Well, or are you gleaning that data from the current survey and just checking the check?
To be honest with you, I'm being vulnerable here. I'm not as concerned by anything that has an X because I'm most concerned about the things that are on the district scorecard.
Right.
But that doesn't mean, again, that it's not important. I am good with changing any wording on here.
I'm actually like looking at this document as a reminder for all of us, and I'm not okay with, you know, tweaking words and trying to, you know, change it. I think it's good for us at a later date for us to go over, not today or another time, to go over it. It's a good reminder for us about all the stuff that we are doing. I want to congratulate us so far. I think that Superintendent Stuckey and the teams of schools are doing a lot of this stuff, much more than, you know, is it perfect? Heck no, but it's really good and they're getting there. I'd rather just like leave most of the stuff. And then eventually you will have another strategic plan meeting. And at that time, it would be more of a group of people that may tweak it or change it or a little bit. It's
I like
okay to
that.
be 75% and then go, whoa, it's 90. Whoa.
Yeah.
You know, it's okay. You know?
Positive surprises are a good thing.
Yeah.
Applications are a good
Yeah,
thing.
I think just going over this, it's a good eye opener for me, but
A reminder.
it's good reminders for us. But you're right, the scorecard is what we gotta really worry about.
But these are important.
They're very important. They're very, very important.
And maybe this is an annual thing that needs to happen, is that we pull this out every year.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then one day it's gonna be like, gosh, this is just an old document. We've done all this. Look what a good job. Look at that. We're just moving on along with something else.
That's right.
We're looking at my parents for like dashboard with all the stuff that I don't know what I'm looking at. This is it. Only 49% of parents have downloaded the app.
Oh, 49%.
That's what this is in here. So if we're talking about just downloading the app. Anyways,
And
why
this
I-
probably comes from, if they talk about a family member, it's like the students all have done it. Or most of the students have done it. And that's a family member. The students have on that's right.
Things like Oxford.
High school does. You get-
High school has Student Square, is that what it's called?
I believe so. Yeah.
Thank you for that information.
That one is
So I
good.
just saw the, Android videos.
Okay. What page are we on? 7.
How's that reunification exercise going?
It's happening in May. It's
Yay.
There
happening.
you go.
Good.
The positive thing in all this, even when there are X's, is that this is a 5-year plan.
I know, and I just had such high hopes.
It's all happening.
Yeah.
It's really good.
A lot of positives happening.
There's so
And
many-
all the work that has been invested in just with the bond work alone and just assessing safety of all the schools. I mean, that's just been such a huge opportunity to improve the safety elements in all 3 buildings. It's exciting. Yeah. And the ongoing, I just want to commend you, the ongoing relationships that you're continuing to form with the city and the fire district and all that. That's all gonna. I feel safer for our students because of it. Yeah, I think that's right. We're heading. I think we're heading in a really strong direction. Yes.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you for the good review of the document. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. This is really well organized.
And thank you for your feedback, because now we can get some things ready to share with you later this year. Yeah, it's good. All right, I think we got through the plan review and questions and answers. So I'm going to keep moving to a document, Leadership Matters. We have this document in front of you. This is a one-pager that captures the leadership actions for the year that, again, department heads and administrative heads have embraced. And what you'll see on there is something called rounding, scorecards, district, school, and department, stakeholder surveys and sharing the data, instant feedback, and plan, do, study, act. And anything that has a green asterisk by it is going to be embedded in tonight's discussions. So 2 things tonight we're not going to go very deeply into, and yet they do help contribute to improvement. So I want to break down the 5 things that are on this one pager for you. This is something called rounding, and rounding is a one-to-one conversation that takes place to gain information, but also to build trust and is strengthen climate. And it's a very short series of questions, and what's going well, what would help you do even better at your job. But the really powerful one, is there anyone who's been especially helpful to you? Because as the interviewer, you give a thank you to that 3rd person, not to the person that you're talking to. And so imagine the delight, the surprise of getting a thank you from someone that you didn't even know, may have known something that you did. Does that make sense? So that's something that all leaders are working on this year.
So they talk to their individual teachers
Or classify.
you to their staff, and they go through that, like that, have these questions. That's great.
I like that.
Yeah, good. So surveys and more importantly, what we do with the survey information is called rollout. Inclusive practices, we want clear two-way communication. It's one thing to ask people to take a survey, but that's one way. We want two-way communication, so we take those results back to those who took the survey, say these were our 3 highest areas, let's celebrate. These were our 3 lowest areas that you told us about. What would make it a 5-star experience for you? So being able to get additional feedback and actions from the stakeholders, whether it's students or parents or staff, there's a rollout process for all 3 of those stakeholder groups.
It's good.
Plus Delta is something that we'll do tonight when we finish up the evening, but basically it's looking at immediate feedback of things that are going well in the session tonight and things that could be improved. Scorecards, being visible with our data, being open to sharing it, being transparent, looking at what the progress is that's being made toward goals. And then finally, Plan, Do, Study, Act, which I have a 1-page document for you, so you don't have to squint your eyes and look up there if you don't want to do that. This is the foundation of the work that happens in the scorecards, is this cycle of Plan, Do, Study, Act. We plan, what is it that we want to achieve? Those are the annual measures that we have on our district scorecard and on the school scorecards. And how are we going to know if we achieved it? What's the tool we're going to use to measure? So the problem is well defined. The goal is clearly defined. The roles and responsibilities are clearly defined in the plan phase. The do phase is get out there and do it. What are the strategies that we're going to use to achieve in our plan? Use any strategies that will support the plan, carry them out, document the problems, document what's going well or unexpected observations, and collect data. Study. This is when I will come to you and or the principals will come to you 3 times a year, and they're going to share, did we improve? Did we meet our goal? Which strategies worked and which ones need to be adjusted? So it's analyzing all that data. And then finally, act. You either abandon, adopt, or adapt. It either worked, it didn't work, or it kind of worked, but it needs to be modified. These are done in short cycles rather than one long year, because we're learning that short cycles accelerates the improvement. So that's Plan, Do, Study, Act. Before I move to the next slide, are there any questions or conversation you'd like to have on this?
I love this. So do teams do this? In other words, the PLC team is meeting, they're using a strategy. Do they go through these steps with the guidance of, or teachers also can do this by themselves, but it's more powerful if they do it in teams, or how's that done?
Yes, and sort of. Okay. So here's the yes. Jasmine Winslow was really ahead of her time in terms of being an instructional leader at St. Mary's. She was doing Plan, Do, Study, Act 4 years ago. Before this, and this came with Studer. So for some of us, this is newer, improvement science. But St. Mary's has been doing it for a while. These are just now what our leaders are working on. It hasn't gotten to the classroom yet. I have a 4-year plan to integrate because it's big.
So when they meet as a PLC and they're talking about reading or they're talking about math, I think math is it this year. And so they're meeting as a PLC, they can technically use, because you're like,
sure.
They could, this is like a guide for them or a map that they could use.
And my my belief is that they are using the cycle, they're not calling it.
Yeah,
They
I
just
said
don't
they
have
probably
the
do
words,
something,
the
I
same
mean,
word.
But they, okay, I was just kind of
Yeah.
wondering, because this is really good stuff, you know, it'll get you what you need.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or thoughts? Excellent. We're learning. It's a lot to learn and to undo some things in order to get better.
And the intention of having this be an ongoing cycle is so important, because when you pause to plan, when you take the time to plan, do, study, act, you're celebrating successes along the way, you're acknowledging some barriers, you're able to identify what you need, the resources that, you know, I love the A in this, the adapt, adopt, or abandon.
I like
It's
that.
so powerful. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's great.
It's similar to the analogy I've shared with you before of, do you want a well child checkup every once in a while, or do you want to wait for the autopsy to find out that there was a problem?
Yeah.
So the short improvement cycles, checking along the way. The scorecard here and how plan, do, study acts in the scorecard. The annual goals are the plan. Do is the strategies. Let me back up. The plan also includes what we're going to do to progress monitor and the tool that we're going to use. What are our strategies is the do. The study would be the red, green, yellow coloring there. Did we make it? Did we not make it? And the act is deciding what needs to go back in those strategies that you're going to adapt, adopt, or abandon, what needs to be modified or taken out. I'll be able to do this with the data I have. My district scorecard presentation to you is next month. And for many of these, I'll be able to tell you, we're adapting this one and here's why, or we're abandoning this one and here's why. Because if we don't have data on some of these things within 8 weeks,
Then we just gotta, that's gonna be hard for some people.
Yeah.
Because abandoning what you've been thinking has been working for a long time and realizing it really is that to abandon is difficult.
one of the things that I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
One of the examples I've used to help people understand, and it goes with so many things, is do you want to compare an orange with all the slices, or do you want to compare the slice? If you make strategies that are so big that they're an orange, it's going to be really hard to adapt, adopt, abandon because it's so big. But if you can break it down to a more effective, smaller strategy, then you really will know within 8 weeks whether, was your strategy too big? Was it just right? Does it, you know what I'm saying? So we do that a lot in our admin meetings. Is this an orange or is this an orange slice?
How are the teachers with the 8-week kind of a thing, or that's really hard?
This hasn't hit the classrooms yet.
Okay, so it probably will a little bit this year and next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's really part of looking at effective short week cycles.
It has in terms of PLCs and keeping interventions fluid, but in terms of this language and PDSA, that has not hit the classroom. What I'm wondering if it might be helpful for the board for me to present my 3 to 4 year unrolling of all of this and the waves of it and when it hits the classroom. Is that something that you would be interested in seeing?
Yeah.
Do that.
This is brilliant. It's hard work though.
It's hard work. Go slow to go fast.
When I went to Estacada, the students were doing this.
And 4 years from
Yeah.
now, that's what we
Yeah,
want to see.
because it eventually went to the students doing this with what they were learning and setting their goals and stuff. It was pretty impressive to listen to what some of the
5-year-olds could do PDSA.
Wow.
Yeah, confidently. But it takes time.
Yeah. Time and
I think
practice.
I've missed my timing. I'm way beyond 5 years old. I don't know if I can adapt well enough to adopt PSA.
Rachel, back to the strategic plan. When does
Sure.
this strategic plan end?
27, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we start all over again. Fresh ideas or some of the same ideas? What are our stakeholders telling us they value? Okay to continue?
Mhm.
Okay. Next steps. School board meeting, November 12th. I'll have the district scorecard report 1 of 3 reports that you'll get this year. You'll get another one in March and another in July. And you'll get to see all of the strategies that the admin team has identified for the annual measures you've already looked at. So I'll have that for you. I will have the 2023-24 assessment results. Granted, you know that information already. That's been shared during my evaluation and executive session, but I want to make sure that the community sees that. And we're providing that information during a school board meeting. And possibly advanced reports will be ready. It could happen.
Looking at Mount Angel in comparison to other school districts of our size and our demographics, it's not going to be the same. I might be off, but where do we sit in our school, report card?
Let me provide that information to you.
Compared to, I don't know if Jervis is the same size. I'm just, clearly we don't want to look at Salem Kaiser and compare it to, but it would be nice to see how
Schools of similar size.
You bet.
How we sit.
Maybe not Riverdale.
Excuse me?
Maybe not Riverdale.
Well, no. You're also looking, when you look at similar size, you look at similar SES too. You don't look at,
Although I am curious, maybe we're.
we don't want to
well.
look at
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
I can do that. What I'd like to do, and this was on the 1-pager, it's something we call a plus delta. It's how we end a lot of leadership meetings with department heads and administrators or small work groups. So if I could just get your feedback tonight on things that went well during our hour together. What went well for you? And you can just popcorn them out. You can raise your hand.
Refreshing about our strategic plan.
Absolutely.
Revisiting it?
Revisiting the,
Okay.
yeah.
The sharing of different reactions and perspectives, the diversity of sharing of diverse perspectives.
What at sharing is like open communication, we're not sharing.
I felt that a better understanding of the continuous improvement of the Mount Angel School District. Something like this.
Mine ties with that, knowing what the administrators are focusing on right now, like what you're targeting with them, that they will be working on in their schools.
And I'll take a step back. I think much of the reason it went well for me is how prepared and organized you came for us.
Yes.
So the pre-work was.
Thank you.
The pre-work was.
Yeah.
I do realize though that I could have sent this ahead of time.
I think you did a great job.
Well,
Yeah.
Down.
anything else you want to add? What would make it even better?
I have a question, and I don't know if you want to write this down, so just hear me out for a second.
Sure.
Do we have an existing CIP plan? Continuous improvement plan?
No, they were
Was it merged into the strategic plan?
do you mean the school continuous improvement plans? Or a district one.
District one,
Yeah, this is the district one.
the
It's considered the district improvement plan.
strategic plan.
Do you have a follow-up thought on that
I
or
don't think that's right.
wondering?
I mean, because a continuous improvement plan would mean we were to take this and year over year, we would slice and dice. That sounds like we're not gonna do that for another 3 years.
However, yes, and we've seen from tonight, there are still things that we've got 3 years to improve on that need to get better, right?
Right, but I guess in my past, continuous improvement always meant, you know, things are working well, checked it, you moved on to the things that aren't.
Mhm.
And are there more things that aren't working well?
Oh, for sure,
And
always.
when do we add those to our CIP
Mhm.
or strategic plan?
I see.
What I would like to see though is, this is just a wondering, do each of the schools have their continuous improvement plan aligned to the strategic? I haven't, do their strategic,
So they've switched out from the SIP to the scorecard.
The scorecard, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, although St. Mary's is required in addition to
Because
do a
they
SIP
have
because
it.
of Title I.
Because of Title I, they have what is, yeah, a continuous improvement plan, it's their Title I school. Is St. Mary's in school improvement? No. Okay, just
Thank you
wondering.
for asking.
There's quite a few
Sorry.
years ago.
I didn't mean
I
to
know
sound
they were, but I was
offensive.
just like, they're not, I didn't think they were, but I
Not
just
now.
wanted to. Cause you were saying
Should I
that
catch
stuff was
them?
in barcode, yeah, and I was like, oh, just making sure it wasn't.
Because to me, again, that's continuous improvement. Like we need to, what else exists in our district that we aren't looking at today in all these wonderful documents that you have? And I think though, Rachel, to keep talking about that, you capture a lot of that in this. In your PDSA, but are there things that are so big that they need to go into this is something like before 2027?
You know what I really appreciate about that is this is the beginning of things that are going to happen that nail that just right. And what will end up happening is through extensive rounding, we'll come up with something called a stoplight report. These are the things that have to get addressed because we're seeing a trend from employee to employee that this is a problem that has to be addressed. So it's coming. So I think you're spot on that this is like the foundation of
Just like
that.
you'll see a trend once you do marry the PBIS with the other, and you'll see trends you'll see the trends. I think one thing that maybe we could look at is more data-driven stuff. I think maybe that would kind of help. Mark, another
Yeah,
one.
but I would say this from my experiences in the building that how do you collect data that's worthwhile to be used in any meaningful way? And then how are you using it and what is it actually giving?
Well, I think if you begin to use some of this data through this system, you could, and if you're doing it in 8-week cycles, you begin to merge. I think what you could do I see your point on the school improvement plan, and maybe somewhere along the line, and this is not a technical term, but it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda, we could actually have a list that we're not including in the strategic plan, but it would be ideas or things that for future conversation or things that we can discuss that clearly is blatantly left out or maybe not left out, but I'm not thinking that we change the whole strategic plan, but it is a good idea to look at, oh my gosh, this year there's something that we're really missing that we should look at differently. So it doesn't mean that we say we never look at other stuff. So maybe we have a separate meeting where we, kind of say, yeah, this is a really good plan, but this is what we're seeing, and how do we kind of reconcile some of these issues?
And my thought on that is that a future work session could be the administrators and the board doing just that, conversation together.
Just having a
Yeah, because I think that's another place where I was feeling a little hesitant to make suggestions on taking specific action to adjust this without the administrators
Right.
as part of that too. So that could be a cool, this isn't what could be approved, but a future idea for a work session is, bring us all together to really figure out. And I appreciate you saying that, Mark, because with the strategic plan, they are like a 2 to 5 year plan. And what are we doing that's more iterative and
Yeah.
easily adjusted?
So
Right.
you can have work sessions and we can begin to look at that. We can look, so.
Well, but I guess I would say I don't want to duplicate the way we had a continuous improvement plan in the past, and then we all agreed that we were gonna change that up and make it easier for administration to
with the score.
manage all of that and go forward. But I guess my concern is that if this is so rigid, and those are my words, that we're not changing anything, where is our continuous improvement pieces? I do see it in this, and I think this is a great chunk. But this is something that community doesn't see, right? And how do we show our community that our systems are improving over time outside of a 7-year plan?
Might that question get answered when we start putting the scorecards on our website and with parents? And here's why I'm asking. The original strategic plan and then shifting to the scorecard allowed this group to think about things that were never even put on here. Like, we didn't even think about attendance. We didn't even think about any academic goals on here. But once we shifted to the scorecard, we were able to add things, and we want to continue to be able to do it, right?
Right.
And so the scorecard and annual measures can change every year.
So maybe our scorecard is more of the vehicle.
So that's probably in another session that we really dig into that scorecard and see how that all fits with all of this.
Quite possibly.
How's that?
When was the last time, Rachel, that you gave us a scorecard? Do you recall?
June or July.
Is this every quarter?
It was every quarter, but now it's 3 times a year because quarter it was too much. It was going too fast. So what would you like to know about the scorecard? What are your questions?
If we saw it in the summer, when would we see it?
You'll see it next month with modified annual measures and modified strategies.
And is that during our regular board meeting?
Yeah. What else could make this a 5-star experience?
It is, for me, it's a 5-star experience. I want to thank you. This has been a really good session. I feel that everyone contributed really well. I think that it was organized. It was like, have I been sleeping? I've seen this before, but it was like seeing it again.
Yeah.
With this one, this is new, right?
Yes.
This is new to us.
Right.
Yes. That's your sneak peek at next month.
Right.
Which
come back.
is our.
That's when I do my district report number 1. You'll see this without the little icons all over it.
Right. But is this the district report?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is our continuous improvement plan.
It's what?
This is our quasi continuous improvement.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Kind of in that realm
Yeah.
of moving forward and changing things as needed.
For all intents and purposes, a district improvement plan is required by ODE through law and policy, and we probably would use this for Division 22. However, for our own learning and purposes, it makes sense that we would use scorecards that are fluid and are constantly evolving for our district improvement plan. Does that make sense?
On this form, you have CIPs listed. What is that?
Continuous improvement team. That's something that we meet every 3 to 4 weeks with the admin team to review different sets of data. Yeah. And I'll make sure you get the scorecards before the board meeting because it will be a lot to absorb and to process.
This isn't part of the plus Delta. As we're talking, and the first page, we're talking about graduation rates and the comment that those who it's a better fit for them to get their GED, they count against us. And I'm wondering, and this is just a wondering, when we communicate out our graduation rates, people are very interested in that. And I'm assuming we give the full picture, or maybe there are opportunities to give the full picture. Well, even though our graduation rate says this many students opted to get their GED because it was a better pathway for them. These were a little less traditional pathways, and they're still, in progress, or they can take it this way. But just to tell the story more holistically, because the graduation rate, it does
It's an ugly number.
make our number go down, and everybody deals with it the same way. We don't work at manipulating the data to boost our number, and I'm sure there are districts that do. So I'm just thinking kind of out loud that telling our story holistically is a nice thought.
Yeah, could you tell a story and say, if we don't include students with this and this and this, those that actually walked across the stage, what is their rate?
Yeah.
Because those are,
kind of like
are
telling
the
it in a
things
couple different ways. And this the percentage of this whole pool that did walk across to get their diploma, and yet we have this other group of kids that, for many reasons, they opted to get their GED instead. And look at how that. I mean, I think
that becomes my question of, when do you go back and you look for credit retrieval? If you have ideally kids on track and they enter high school basically on track, or they enter middle school on track, then you're looking at your percentage of how many kids that you need to, lack of a better word, remediate or begin to look at on track. And then you're saying, what's wrong with our system if they were okay in 9th grade, but by 12th grade, they were not okay, what's going on? So you're beginning to look at that graduation, because you're just kind of thinking, what's wrong with our system that we're not meeting the needs of our kids?
Right. Yeah, that's another way to look at it.
I mean, that's how I'm looking at it. What's wrong with our, is it, something's not okay in our system? And then why are kids in our system choosing? Some kids will always choose for GED, but that was my big aha when I first came on the board, was appointed. I just couldn't believe, I just felt, and this is just a personal statement, that kids were being like, well, if they're not meeting at the high school, they could just get their GED, or they could just go do XYZ. And I'm like, well, geez, why are we here?
Yeah. It's not preferred.
It's not preferred by us. And, and how many kids are doing that versus how many kids, and how do we switch that around?
Right.
And you can't expect an administrator to switch it around, or a teacher to switch it around. Our system, something isn't aligned for that to happen. So that's kind of like why I'm interested in, like, it's not only how many kids enter high school, it's like how many kids are not prepared when they enter 6th grade, or, or that's what we're looking at too.
And the other component of graduation rates are, it might only take 2 students getting their GED to change that number.
I understand that. But that could be disaggregated data that you could actually, like what Sherry said.
Right, exactly.
You could actually then say, blah, 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 kids graduated, only 2 kids got a GED, 3 kids dropped out of school, or, or whatever it is. But that's what you're kind of like looking at. Because
My pause with that is that becomes personally identifiable.
Well, that's true.
And so I would like to do some consultation to find out how I can work with that.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're this small.
Well, could you say it something like students whose exit or path did not follow the state definition of graduation?
And then give examples of what that could be.
Then it can be identifiable.
But no, you could give examples of what that could be. you're not saying that it did.
So, yes.
You know what I mean? You don't have
A little
to say, you-
explanation.
then you, this many got their GED.
Right,
You're
and
just
then you're
saying,
actually-
these are examples of
Because
what.
you're
that
looking at your
means.
whole
Yeah.
system and you're looking at how many of these kids were kindergartners going through the system and how many kids came in 8th grade or how many. kids
And my
came in high
mind
school.
goes, and this is
No.
not founded on anything other than what I believe could be true. A student could just have severe social anxiety, and it could be that working on their own and getting their GED was just for them the best fit, you know? And it's
Well,
not
and
supposed
you know,
to tell them,
And
it's that for them.
oh,
you know?
I agree with that,
Yeah.
but it would be good
Yeah,
information to know. I mean, and
I
this
just
is,
don't want them to feel like
and
they're
this
less
has
than,
nothing to
you
do
know?
with.
I don't wanna label them as counting against us.
No,
You know,
But
I
the
wanna,
reality is, the state counts it against
Right.
us.
our graduation rate suffers because of it, and yet
It might be the best fit for
it
them.
might be okay that
Further
some choose
education,
the
yeah.
GED route, because for them it was. the
That's
better
true.
pathway.
But then that comes down to our graduation rates.
Yes,
You know, increasing, and that's.
yeah, and it's
year
both
by
and,
year,
right, we want
class
to
size
make
by
it,
class
we
size.
want to make it a welcoming environment, we want to make people feel like they belong, we want all of that, and so all of this goes together,
And I
and yet.
think maybe in 2027, we say on-time graduation rates, instead of using the word increase, maybe we say something, you know, are 82% or better.
Yeah.
We strive for 82% or better, because that's always that number will change year to year.
It has to be 90-something% graduation rate.
Yeah,
I mean,
our
that's how
goal
I
is
look
to
at it.
be-
It needs to be 90-something% graduation.
That would be our goal.
Yeah, but again, if your class size is such that you have a couple of students choose a different path, that may not ever be that.
I think,
it's
but
okay to be
I'm very
aspirational.
optimistic. I think that you can get kids. I'm very optimistic. It's the same thing. My personal goals are these are like, personally, some of these goals are really low, you know, 27% to 31%. You know, I mean, they're okay, but we better be making these goals because they're not that super high.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
They're not aspirational,
They're not
achievable.
aspirational, we're not doing anything super, you know, we're working hard, but you know, and we're being safe about it.
It's hard to gain more than 2 to 3% in a year's time.
Well, and plus,
Nationally, that's a norm.
plus it's also, you see a dip, there's some sort of language about once you start a new curriculum, it may, it dips versus before it
Oh,
goes
that's a
up.
good point.
Yes, there's
Yeah.
like a term for it, so I don't expect, it could go up, but you know, you don't expect it to immediately jump up because that's not, it's new curriculum, it's new learning, it's new whatever, you know, yeah, that too makes it hard.
It's interesting.
Interestingly enough, yesterday I was at the ES meeting for legislative update. And there's a hot button right now with state assessments and more kids like not caring. Like,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just putting whatever, click. And more districts and superintendents are getting savvy about looking at growth data instead of end result data. And what they're finding is that actually there's very acceptable growth going on that's not being captured by the state assessments.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, a million years ago, they used to use that growth.
Right.
They used to use that growth data, so you didn't even do well on your state assessments, but you could document all your growth data, you know.
Yeah. I may be married to someone who on the bubble would just make a pattern.
I may know someone also who used to do that. Like filling the house.
Oh, yeah, you just, there's no tree pattern.
Yes, whatever it is.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
That's good.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for the robust